When you open the stat screen, you probably feel overwhelmed. There is a lot going on in Throne and Liberty, and a lot of different stats and all sorts of things. So I thought I'd take the time, especially with new players coming on board, to go through and talk about all of the stats that exist and how they apply and what to go for, kind of a thing. At least as far as I understand them. But as I was putting this together and talking about all of the stats down here, I decided I'm not going to go over all of these. Instead, I'm going to highly recommend Aragon's video on how damage actually works. He has the calculations, he talks through them all for things like crit hit, chance, and evasion, endurance, and so on. He even has a spreadsheet that you can calculate all this stuff. It is a little bit older, so it's missing some information, but I highly recommend pause my video here and go watch his video. All right, I'm going to count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hopefully you watched his video and you understand a lot more about how damage is calculated and how things kick in. So I'm going to talk through more of it. He also has a video for healing. Healing has a different formula for a lot of it. The short version is, though, for the most part, it's the same idea. It's just that crit hit chance is a lot less efficient, and heavy attack chance is also less efficient. Depending on the skill, sometimes heavy attack chance is better. And then for shields, now that we have the orb, it can crit, but it can't even heavy. So there's that. But if you're interested in healing, there's information out there, and I'll talk about a little more. But he does have a video on this as well. So check those out. I will link those in the description. But he will talk through all these. So let's go over what he doesn't talk about and a few other things. So up at the top, he talks about base damage. Damage reduction, this is just showing you your damage reduction from down here. But the reason it shows you this is because of the sword and shield. You'll see that the sword and shield, oh, I might have to do it that way, has a damage reduction value, in this case of 32, that adds to your damage reduction. If I do a different sword and shield, it has only 40. I guess that's more, but so this number here is just going to be the same as that you have down here. One thing he doesn't touch on in his video, I don't think, damage reduction is the exact counter to bonus damage, so they happen at the same time in the equation. And so if you have less damage reduction than the attacker, if the defender has less damage reduction than the attacker's bonus damage, it'll just subtract it. But if there's more damage reduction, then it will reduce the amount of damage the defender takes. So there's that. Attack speed, he doesn't really talk about this. Let's talk about attack speed. This is one of the most important stats for increasing your damage and getting spells out there or skills out there faster. The way this works primarily comes from your dexterity. So your weapons are going to have a base attack speed. When you look at that here, it has a base of 632, but you can see that my actual attack speed is 0.256. That comes primarily from dexterity first. As I move dexterity, keep it, there we go. You can see that as I remove dexterity points, that goes up. So that means your weapon is slower. It takes longer to do animations from your basic attacks to your skills. Now, there's also the attack speed trait. The way it works is, as you add dexterity, it will speed up your weapon. After it's done speeding up your weapon, then it uses the attack speed value to calculate your final attack speed. And it's a reduction, or it's not a reduction. It works just like cooldown speed. So you divide it by that percentage, or 1 plus that percentage, I guess, technically, to get your new attack speed. So at 100% attack speed, that cuts your attack speed value. I wish they would have used different words here, but 100% attack speed here will take whatever your weapon's speed is, the seconds, and cut it in half after dexterity's been applied. So that's your stat for attack speed. Of course, the faster the number there. With the sword and shield, I'm at 256, but with the daggers, it's 0.194, so quite a bit faster. Okay. Next is your range. He doesn't talk about that, but that's pretty straightforward. Just how far do your attacks reach? mainly your auto attacks and your skills. Some skills will directly play off this. Okay. Shield block chance. This one gets really confusing, especially with the new shields. And this is specific to the sword and shield. You'll see that as I switch to daggers, that's now gone. There is no shield block chance. If the sword and shield is in your hand at the moment that you get attacked, or the defender gets attacked, there is a chance to mitigate, by default, 40% of the damage. And the chance of mitigating 40% of the damage is this shield block chance. So you have, with this one, a 28.3% chance of blocking the damage. Now it's that much because I have weapon mastery. The base for this weapon is 18%. For this one, it's 15%. But when you add on weapon mastery, it jumps it up to this. So this is the true value, and the weapon just comes with a base amount. So it mitigates 40% by default. There's some skills in weapon mastery that can increase that 40%. And it doesn't show you 40% here because that doesn't really change necessarily. So just your shield block chance, that's what that is. Does it block 40% of the damage when you get hit, or when the defender gets hit? On that note, so there are two other weapons, the daggers and the crossbows, that have this offhand weapon attack chance. They both have it. It's the same thing. If I change that, it changes this because of the weapon mastery, but offhand weapon attack chance exists for the daggers, but not for the sword and shield. So what this is, and you'll also see there's a secondary base damage. Every time the daggers or the crossbows do an attack, there is a chance it attacks twice. That second attack, that chance is here. So in this case, I have 31%, 31.6% chance of, if I attack, be it an auto attack or a skill, it'll attack again 31.6% of the time. And when it attacks again, instead of using this number, it uses this number for that calculation. Okay, so that's how that works. And you can increase this with weapon mastery and some skills and stuff, so this does vary, but that's where that works. So those are the three weapons with a very special stat to them. You have the daggers and the crossbow with the offhand weapon attack chance, and then you have the sword and shield, which gives you damage reduction, but also has that shield block chance. Okay, on that, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. Speaking of shield block chance for your sword and shield, I'll go ahead and switch that real quick. The shield block penetration chance, that counters shield block chance. So even though it's the word shield, this has nothing to do with the orb shields that show up on your health bar. That's technically shield health, which you'll see over here. So shields from the orb and the wand are shield health, while the sword and shield is just straight shield. So shield block chance is 28%. I have a 0% chance of penetrating, but let's say this was 10%. Then when an attacker makes an attack against a sword and shield with 10% shield block penetration chance, that would take that 28% and drop it down to 18%. So that's where this comes into play, is against the sword and shield. And that, it does nothing. And it has no effect on orbs or wand shields. Okay. Defense, we've gotten pretty high numbers. He does have updated on his spreadsheet, although it's different in the video, the new defense values for higher monsters. So if you want to calculate that, you can. Defense is pretty important, a very good damage mitigation. And plate, so this is leather armor, which you can see at the bottom down here. I forgot I can do that. But if you equip plate or cloth, I'll equip a cloth piece. Cloth is going to have less defense. So this is 390, where my leather is 410, and then plate's going to be, I do have plate. Although it's not leveled up. If that was leveled, then it would be even higher. So defense is a really good defense stat. He talks about hit chance and evasion. Some updates on information on that. What we have found, or what I found from testing it on one dim trial boss. So it hasn't been an extensive test. It's just what I found on a dim trial boss. Skills, because monsters seem to have, instead of melee, range, and magic, they just have are they dodging auto attacks or are they dodging skills? So is it a skill dodge or an auto attack dodge? They seem to have, or at least that particular dim trial boss, which was Halls of Tragedy, has 300 evasion, give or take. I can't get an exact, but that's what I calculated. For auto attacks, they have an evasion of 500. However, there is a floor of about 100. I found that if my attack or my hit chance, when I tested just above 500, I missed a small number. And then I tested with 700, 800, and then 1200 hit chance, and I missed about the same. I technically missed a little bit more at 500 than 1200 percentage-wise, but that just comes down to variance. It was still in that range of about 100. So if their evasion is 100, you should miss about 9% of your attacks, and I missed about 9%. It fluctuated a little. So I believe that it's around 300 evasion for skills, 500 for auto attacks, but auto attacks have a floor of 100. I could be wrong. I didn't go above 1200 here. Maybe if you have a hit chance of like 3, 4, 5,000, you'll never miss. I don't know, but that's what I found on evasion. So you do want hit chance in PvE, but it's so easy to get up to 700, 800 just by growing your perception. Any build these days, for the most part, is going to have at least 60 at the absolute lowest. 70 is really easy to hit, and some builds even go up to 80. So your hit chance is probably fine. So you don't, for PvE, don't really need hit chance on your traits and stuff for your weapons and your runes and artifacts and stuff. Crit chance, nothing new there. Heavy attack chance, there is something new here. This is a weird word. They should have said heavy attack endurance, not evasion, because it directly subtracts, and it works more like endurance with the crit hit chance instead of evasion against the hit chance. So this is a poor choice of words saying evasion, but this works more like endurance, which I think he talks about, but I wasn't certain, or I can't remember for sure. But they've added a new one, and he does have a video on this, the heavy attack damage and heavy attack damage resistance. When that heavy attack happens, that second part of the attack, by default, this will be 100%, and so it does the same amount of damage, and then it adds the bonus damage. But at 110%, that means that second half of the attack, that heavy attack, it'll be 110% of the original calculation. So if your original calculation was a 10,000 damage hit, and then you have 100 bonus damage, it'll still be 10,000. Then you multiply it by this number, which by default is 100%, but now it's 110 in this case. So instead of 10,000, it'll be 11,000. Add that to the original 10, you do 21,000, and then you add your bonus damage of 100 or whatever your bonus damage is. So that's how this new heavy attack damage comes into play. Heavy attack damage resistance directly takes away from this. So if the defender has more heavy attack damage resistance than the attacker's heavy attack damage, then you can lower the amount of damage a heavy attack does. The other thing to note, so monsters, which I don't remember if he talks about, monsters have no crit hit chance, and you can't go negative endurance, so monsters will never crit you. So critical damage resistance, which blocks critical damage, is kind of pointless in PvE because I don't believe there's any monster that has any crit chance. There might be like some T10 trial or some boss that has it, but for the most part, they don't have crit hit chance. They also don't have heavy attack chance. However, your heavy attack evasion can go negative. And this comes from Grobs on YouTube. He tested this, and if you are negative, monsters can heavy attack you. So you don't want your heavy attack evasion to go negative, or if you do, just know that there will be the occasional time when you take double the amount of damage from an attack from a monster. Of course, PvP, everybody has heavy attack chance, so you want to build these up, but yeah. Skill damage boost, skill damage resistance. This is one of your best defensive stats for PvE. 400 is about the threshold you want for some of the harder content. The higher the better, because monsters, for whatever reason, all of their attacks are considered skills, so this skill damage resistance is really powerful. They don't have skill damage boost, so every point counts here. And of course, in PvP, it just subtracts from the skill damage boost, and whichever one's greater, it either increases or decreases the amount of damage from the attack. Critical damage and heavy attack damage resistance we've talked about. Okay, so buff duration, there is no diminishing returns. So if your buff duration is at 100% and there's a buff that's supposed to last for 6 seconds, it'll be 12 seconds. It'll double it. Unlike attack speed, which just cut your attack speed in half, which is also how cooldown speed works too. The buff duration is just a direct add-on. So that's how that one works. Debuff duration is the same. Or is not the same. It's closer to these. The higher your debuff duration, the less, or the shorter the debuffs applied to you, like stun and whatever other debuffs you get. This is where the Tevin Orb, if you've heard about that, really comes into play for curse damage. So the higher, or I guess technically lower because it's negative, your debuff duration, the less time that debuffs apply to you. If you could, I don't think it's possible, but if you could get your debuff duration to negative 100%, then it would cut the debuffs in half. So if it's supposed to apply for 3 seconds, it'll only apply for 1.5 seconds. So that's where your debuff duration comes in. Okay. I believe that's everything here. Like I said, watch his video. Hopefully you already did. So let's go to this side. A lot of these are pretty straightforward. Max health. Okay. Health regen. It is hard, if not impossible, to get this to a useful number in PvE. I mean, 2,000 health every 10 seconds is a very, very slow rate. So you pretty much just ignore your health regen. Max mana is good. Mana regen's good. Stamina, if you don't know what this is, it's for your Q blocks. When you press Q, there'll be a stamina bar, which isn't going to happen because I'm not actually getting attacked. But if I fly, this is your stamina bar. In town, it doesn't go down, but normally it would when you're flying, right? So the more stamina you have, the further you can fly, the more you can block. Stamina regen, so it fills back up. The higher this is, the better as well. Especially for flying. As you fly, the higher your stamina regen, the slower your stamina will tick down. Same with running. Same with running like morphed. If you're in combat, let me get into combat and then run. It should. Oh, it's not doing it probably because I'm in town. But yeah, the more stamina regen you have, the further you can go because it also slows down how fast it ticks away. Mana cost efficiency works the same way as cooldown speed and attack speed. So if you had 100% mana cost efficiency, the mana cost of your skills, actually it might be easier from here. If I, oh, can I click on it here? Nope. Okay. Well, you can see the mana cost in this case is 125, which I believe is post. Yeah, that's definitely post mana cost efficiency. So let's say its base was 250. If I had 100% mana cost efficiency, then it would drop down to 125. And that's how your cooldown speed works as well. So at 100% cooldown speed, your cooldowns are cut in half. So if it's supposed to be 20 seconds, it'll go down to 10 seconds if your cooldown speed's at 100%. Attack speed's the same thing we already talked about there. This is something relatively new compared to those videos. Healing has been split up into 3 different stats. You have healing, skill healing over time, and shield health. Healing, which applies to Healing Wave, Restoring Constellation, Fountain of Life, Clay Salvation, Swift Healing, and Invigorating Salvation. Skill healing over time is your Healing Touch, your Healing Star, your Grand Elan Vitality, the Grand Elan Bow, and Flash Wave. And then shield health is all your shields. So you got Distortion Veil, Guardian Defense Wall, and Invincible Wall from the wand. So, oh, that guy's going to talk in the background. So those skills have been split up for which one they are. And credit to, I believe you pronounce her name Antribu. So credit to her and her Scryer doc for that information. So with that, that's as you're applying it with those skills. On the flip side, healing received, targeted skill healing over time, and shield health received is how much you get when it's applied to you. Whether you're applying it or somebody else is applying it, when it applies to you, that's how much you get. And there is no diminishing returns. These work a lot like buff duration. So if you have 100% healing and you're supposed to heal for 1,000, you'll heal for 2,000. If you're supposed to receive 1,000 healing, you have 100% healing received, you'll heal for 2,000. Most people, as far as I know, at least in PvE, don't worry about this side. Healers worry about increasing theirs to some extent. But in PvE, at least, you kind of just ignore these. That might be different for PvP, I'm not sure. Then there's Amitoi Healing. That's how much you heal when your Amitoi triggers. Here, the base is 90. So every time your Amitoi heals, it'll heal for 90, but then it adds this percentage. However, the calculation's weird, and I haven't figured it out. So this 277% is close, but it's always off by a little bit. So Amitoi Healing, it can be helpful, but it's honestly so small because your base is 90. Potion healing, same thing, just how much you heal from potions. In PvE, you probably don't use potions very often because you either have self-heals or your healer heals you, and the cooldown for potions is so long that I don't think anybody worries about potion healing. CC, the way this formula works is a lot more efficient than critical hit or heavy attack. It's about a 4-to-1 ratio. Your chance on every skill, it'll say, is it a weaken, is it a stun, petrify, sleep, etc. This increases your chance. On the flip side, or your chance if you're applying it, so the attackers, the defenders, they use their resistance, and when it actually goes to apply, the skill will say 80% chance it weakens the target and applies burning. It will then take the weaken chance of the attacker, subtract the weaken resistance of the defender, and then use that number to calculate a percentage off that 80%. So say in the end it's 10% across the board, then it'll only have a 70 or it'll have an 88% chance if the weaken chance is higher. It'll have a 72% chance if the weaken resistance is higher, because it bases it off that 80% of the skill and then does the calculation there. There are some that aren't applied by any of these. So there might be a skill that, in fact, I think knife throwing just got updated, so this would be a good example. So on knife throwing, it says decreases healing received. That used to be a weaken, but now it's just straight across. Decreases healing received there at the bottom. I can't click on that. So it's no longer a weaken, so you can't really resist against that anymore. I'm gonna go over here where they're not talking. So that's how all of these, where were we? Here. Work is it uses this chance, subtract the resistance. If the resistance is higher, then the chance of whatever skill goes down. And you can see if I go negative, that means if someone tried to apply sleep to me, their sleep chance would be increased by 25. So if they were at 465 attacking me, they would actually be at 490. So they would have a greater chance. So for PvP, these are really, really good. In PvE, monsters, they seem to have a negative resistance to almost every attack, where the attack might say, and actually my Mind's Rock daggers are a perfect example of this. This says that there's an 8% chance to apply Weaken Curse. Well, I find against monsters, it's almost 100%. I've never actually noticed it not do it. I'm sure it does here and there. But monsters seem to have like really low resistance, really negative resistance for most skills. So most of the time when a skill says there's an 80% chance, an 8% chance or whatever, against monsters, it's going to be 100% of the chance, 100% chance for most skills most of the time. PvP, of course, is a whole different ballgame. Species damage boost, he talks about that in his video. This is directional, so this only really comes from your earrings. which these earrings don't have the traits for it. So there's that. Do I have any that do? Yeah, here we go. So the Wild Crest studs have back critical hit chance. So you just add this flat to your damage numbers over here for all of the different types. Boss, same thing. You're just going to add it to your amount over here if you're attacking a boss. In the open world, the mini bosses that show up on your map is like a little red icon like this, but it's red. Those are not considered bosses. Those are considered elite, so those are different. Bosses are going to be like your dim trials, the world boss, guild boss, things like that. The one stat that doesn't make sense here is the hit chance. I really don't understand why they've done that, because bosses work in the same way here. I did even test trying to get my hit chance higher. I had a lot of boss hit chance, and it made no difference versus just adding regular hit chance. So, if you have chaos runes of hit chance, boss hit chance, and you're looking for ones to delete, unless something changes that I don't know about, they're kind of pointless, because you're going to have enough hit chance otherwise anyway. You can see that when I actually go to attack a boss, I have negative hit chance. So instead of 858, I'm going to be at 840, but functionally it's the same thing. So that's how these work. Most people build for heavy attack chance here for reasons. Face off, this only applies when facing other players, but otherwise it's all kind of the same. These ones primarily come a lot from your Amitoi. So if we go over to Amitoi, you got your lithograph book there, and you have Amitoi effects, and then PAL synergies. And so a lot of these come from that. And these ones are pretty straightforward. When you gain experience, which if you're level 55, this is useless. Item chance, just when monsters drop an item. I don't believe this applies to bosses, but when monsters drop an item, especially in open dungeons, this is an increase in whether or not they drop an item. Abyssal Contract token bonus, this works like food, so when you activate food, that'll go up. Weapon Mastery XP bonus, same thing, works like food, so you gain more. And I'm pretty sure this is a flat, so if this happened to be 100%, you would double your Weapon Mastery. Matter of fact, if I put on my Black Anvil Wand, that should go up to 67, yeah, so that is how that one works. Over here, Solent bonus, every time you gain Solent from monsters specifically. If it's from like a contract, this doesn't apply, but monsters and open world and stuff, and open dungeons. Crafting material chance, I presume that has to do with housing. I don't actually know that one. Oh, interesting. I'll admit, I've always just mentally seen these two as the same, but this is gaining bonus, and I don't know where that would apply, but this is like your actual efficiency. If this was 100%, then you would only burn half as many tokens when you kill a monster in an open world dungeon. Fishing level bonus, this comes from your fishing rods. So I have a fishing rod that gives me 4, which I believe is the highest in the game. Fishing mastery and cooking mastery bonus. So when you fish and you cook, whether or not they level up quicker. So this comes right now, this 15% is from my guild. So yeah, that is every stat in here. Like I said, watch Aragon's video. It is very good and talks you through all of this stuff. So one question that comes up frequently that I was going to talk about at the beginning of the video, and if you are here this late into the video, you're going to get an extra tidbit that's really important. A very common question is, what's the difference between heavy attack chance and all of the types of heavy attack? Heavy attack chance increases all 3. So on your game, when you look at heavy attack chance, if I got the heavy attack chance rune that added 40, it would add 40 to all 3. If I get a specific one, say I get the melee heavy attack chance that adds 60, it'll add 60 to this number and nothing to these two. So that's the difference between a regular heavy attack chance, oh, I guess it was 48, whatever, and then a specific heavy attack chance. Is it's just more for one type or less, but does all types. So if both of your weapons are the same type, you pretty much always want to get that type of heavy attack, crit, whatever you're going for. The one exception to that is if you play Crossbow, chance with some other weapon, chances are the crossbow is nothing more than a boost to the damage from the other weapon. Most of the damage from crossbow comes from the detonation mark, which isn't affected by any stat of the crossbow itself except for its base damage. So you don't care about range stats because all of your damage comes from your other weapon. So if your other weapon is an orb and your crucifix, it's magic. If your other weapon is daggers and your scorpion, it's melee. So that's the only other exception. Otherwise, if you have mixed weapons, you can do heavy attack chance. But if you have a specific weapon type, like Oracle with wand and orb, Invocator with staff and wand, if you're a tank with SNS and greatsword, you'll have melee or magic, depending on which weapons you have. You can still take this to gain that as well, but you want to focus on your type. Yeah, I believe that's everything I wanted to talk about. I know this was a long video. I'm coming up on almost 40 minutes, so I know I've got some cuts in there, so it'll probably be 35-ish, I'm going to guess. So thank you for sticking around the whole time. Hopefully you learned something. Please ask questions. I'll probably make a second version of this because I know I rambled. I just wanted to kind of get this out there. So ask questions, and then I'll take those notes, and here in a little while, I might make a second video. If I don't get a lot of questions and this turns out to be good, then great.